curious to see where they're gonna take the character, especially when a scene later, he gains some morale as Willa ends up accepting his proposal, and my god, their marriage already sounds like the most juicy, hilarious shit show. I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us.
Oh god. Depending on who you ask, this quote of mine aged like fine wine or like pure, rotten milk. In any case, if you're still wondering, this video is about At this point in time, I think it's kinda redundant to talk about Succession as a whole. Regardless of how you felt about this last season, or whether you liked the finale or not, it's undeniable that it has already cemented itself as one of the greatest shows ever made. From the performances to the direction and the writing, Succession was one well-oiled machine that, without a doubt, will influence the next generation of TV shows, just like The Sopranos and Breaking Bad did in the past. As a huge fan, even before this last season premiered, I kept wondering if I would make another video about it. I know this sounds extra cynical considering my video on the third season's finale is the one that has helped this channel grow and get monetized. But if there's one show where I had high hopes that it would stick the landing, that was Succession. And lo and behold, they did just that. This fourth season might be my favorite of the show. It really felt like Jesse Armstrong and his team pulled all the stops for this last round, to the point that I can't think of a single episode that wasn't, at the very least, really good. But in this video, I want to focus on one specific thing. If you saw the thumbnail, you probably already know what I'm gonna talk about. Because, with all the praise I have just given this season, to my complete and utter shock, its climax, the high point of it, came right at the beginning. And just like in my other video, fuck yeah, I want to talk about it. Let's do it. The episode in question, Connor's Wedding, is the third one of the fourth season. It was written by Armstrong himself and directed by Mark Millar, a pattern that Succession fans might have noticed by this point. Every time these two gentlemen are helming an episode, you can probably expect big things to come. Which is not exactly in your mind at the beginning of it, because it all starts like a setup of sorts. Logan is gonna make big moves by firing some key people, and he's gonna task Roman with cutting Jerry off. And before I continue, did you notice that this scene marks Logan's last line ever on the show?
Strategic refocus. A bit more fucking aggressive.
Which is something that I just love because if he was supposed to die, it's great to see that he went out with the most Logan line possible. In any case, back to him and Roman. It's such a crappy but on-brand move for Logan to make his son fire the person that he's been the most emotionally attached to, just to test his allegiance. And of course, he follows through with it and it goes as bad as you would expect. And I gotta tip my hat to J. Smith-Cameron, the actress playing Jerry, who gave so much subtlety and grace reacting to a cold-hearted backstab, especially after all the loyalty she's given Logan and Waystar. It all sucks for Roman, and as said in the Inside the episode, this might be his worst day ever. Enough that it prompts him, for the second time, to stand up to his father and call him out on his bullshit. It has been very interesting, if not a bit heartbreaking, to see Roman's relationship with his father evolve through the seasons and see him get to the point where he might, once and for all, bite him back and stay on his own course. Something that, for good or for bad, we never got to see in the rest of the season. But let's keep moving because before the big incident happens, there's another huge piece of character information we get. One that not many people have talked about it. Which is when Willa talks with the siblings and mentions that Connor is getting angry because the wedding cake looks like loony cake, something that really confuses her. The siblings explain the backstory behind Connor being stuffed with sponge cake during the week his mother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, and this informs so much on his relationship with Logan. It's almost bizarre that I praised Connor's character development during my last video on Succession, and then these first few episodes double down on that, and really makes us understand him. A tragic figure that has spent his life having his family taken away from him, being ignored by his father, and to a lesser extent his siblings, yet somehow learning to live with all the pain. It puts many of his actions into a different perspective, and it's vital for us to also understand his reaction when he receives the earth-shattering news. Which, let's not beat around the bush much longer, it's the reason you all came to see this video. Let's talk about the fateful call that Tom makes to Roman. The first thing I wanted to point out is that, unlike many of the most famous episodes in succession, like the aforementioned All the Bells Say, This Is Not for Tears, there isn't a crescendo here. It doesn't build up to a climax. This is the climax. What follows is simply the fallout from such an event. And by God, is it anything short of a masterpiece. First of all, the idea that they could have killed Logan in so many ways, but they decided to go with something that almost felt like a sick joke, with many in the audience claiming afterwards that they spent 80% of the episode thinking this was some sort of elaborate prank on Logan's part. But more than anything, they went with something that was deeply, profoundly real. I could waste words describing the beauty of this decision, but instead, I'll let the creators themselves explain it.
We wanted to capture a feeling of death that people experience in the modern era, of separation, of communication.
That's by separation is learned by email or phone call or text.
These things happen in all our lives, with our parents or anyone you love, anybody in your life, and something happens and they're just gone.
And yeah, how could I be mad with this decision? As they said, how many times in this day and age we've witnessed or even suffered the news of family death through a text message or call. No fanfare, no chance to say goodbye, just a couple of words saying, so and so is gone, I'm sorry. And to capture this feeling, this piece of our real world so faithfully in a piece of media is, in my opinion, nothing short of a miracle. And things get more and more brilliant as we delve deeper on each character's individual reaction. Starting with Roman, who was the first one to hear the news, as he crumbles completely and goes into denial, refusing to believe this is even happening, to the point that he's unable to even say a full goodbye to his father.
No, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that.
Then with Kendall, who keeps himself a bit more together, but despairs at the thought of his father dying, and tries desperately to change this outcome. He's always been this sort of playboy who feels the need to be giving orders to everyone, especially when things start to slip away from his hands. So it's very interesting, if not heartbreaking, to see him try to gain control of the situation, throwing insane orders around, yet ultimately getting nowhere. Slowly coming to the realization that, no matter what he does, he won't be able to stop what's coming. And finally, Shiv, who in a sick twist of fate, had the chance to be the first one to say goodbye to her father, but didn't because she indeed had every reason to not want to talk with Tom at that point. And to see her slowly realize what's happening and break down, almost turning back into a little girl, is gut-wrenching. With this moment,
Daddy?
Being the point where probably many people got emotional. Which is insane considering who everyone is weeping for, but that's the power of great television. It makes you empathize with the characters and their emotional state, no matter how awful they all are as people. They are still human, going through a very relatable human pain. But for me, the best, the most amazing part of this entire sequence is how all of their goodbyes carry this sort of duality. There's love, but there's also resentment, which they can't avoid but let it come to the surface. Logan was a horrible, horrible father, but he was still their father. It's a bond that's hard to shake, that is connected to love, and they've received some of it, however twisted it was. But all the pain, all the psychological warfare he inflicted on his children, that didn't cease to exist, and it's a marvel to see the siblings play with this complexity in different ways.
Because you're a monster, and you're gonna win. Because you just win. You're a very, very good dad. You did a good job.
Okay, we love you. I love you, Dad. I can't forgive you. But it's okay.
I love you. Don't go, please, not now. I love you, you fucking... There's no excuses for me, but
Just brilliant acting all around. And we're not even done because they still had to give the news to Connor. And the juxtaposition between his initial reaction and the siblings is like day and night. With the first words that he utters being,
"Well, is he?"
And right after, the real gut punch.
"Oh man. He never even liked me."
Which he eventually backtracks, but it says everything you need to know about how he saw Logan. And at this point, knowing what we know about Connor, it makes complete sense. Made even worse when we continue to follow the siblings and how they deal with Logan's death throughout the episode. With Roman still in denial, Shiv unable to think straight, and Kendall trying to get a hold of the situation. It's insane to think that these people are not even allowed to properly grieve their father, because of how much Logan's death will send shockwaves around the world. They have a narrative to create, a response to make, actions to take that will define the future of Waystar. And as we switch between the siblings on the ground and his team on the plane, the disparity between how both sides are treating his death couldn't be more different. Which is something that I love, because almost like an inverted mirror, the folks up there, unlike the Roy children, don't take too long to brush off his death and start planning the next moves. There's this weird balance between them all, but especially Carolina, of trying to be respectful but also being incredibly indifferent to his passing because Logan was, well, a monster. And most likely humiliated everyone in that room at least once. It's almost ironic in a sense. In my initial reaction, there was a part of me that was sad that Logan would never live to taste real defeat, to see his empire escape from his hands or crumble right in front of him. But the more I thought about it, the more his ending felt incredibly deserved. If Logan had chosen his family and went to his son's wedding, it's possible he might have been taken to a hospital in time and survived, or even if that wasn't in the cards, he would have died surrounded by his children and loved ones. But he chose business and paid the price for it, dying a mediocre death in a tiny bathroom of an airplane, surrounded by ass-kissers and vultures who, as Carl said, didn't even wait for the body to get cold to start going at it. The perfect punishment for a greedy man who put money above everything, who mistreated family and friends, who felt pleasure in punching down others and had no moral qualms whatsoever. But just to bring up the energy a little bit, I gotta say, only this show could make me tense and emotional with the death of a bastard like Logan, and also execute some really dark comedy. With the whole Carrie in shock thing, Tom's reaction, and Carl's killer line,
"Chuckles the clown? I think not."
being Succession at its most funny and unhinged. The rest of the episode is, as I said, a lot more about them dealing with the fallout of Logan's death and how to proceed from here on out. Which might not hit the heights of the first half of the episode, but it's still this show's bread and butter, highly compelling, and it makes you wonder what's gonna happen next. And if all that was mentioned in this video wasn't enough, there's an entire array of praises I could give to the technical side of this episode. Almost like the Succession team knew the masterpiece they had in their hands, they went above and beyond to create a very particular vibe to it. From sticking with handheld cameras to feel as unpredictable and chaotic as the situation they all find themselves, to taking a bet on long takes in order to not allow the audience some breathing room, forcing them to stay with the characters in the moment. There's a now famous half-hour take they did, when Roman and Kendall find out, to Kendall going to grab Shiv, telling her about what happened, and the Herculean task they went to get this shot to happen. From rehearsals to a whole system involving switching film rolls since they were not shooting this episode on digital, to the director not telling Jeremy Strong where Sarah Snook was, allowing him to have a genuine search through the room to find her. It's the type of trouble that they did not need to go through to shoot this episode, but when it plays on screen, you can definitely see the results. And I could go on and on here with details not only from the production but from the actors themselves, like Ken and Shiv holding hands as they are about to go tell Connor, a small gesture of support that feels extra tragic when thinking about how these two fall out at the end of the show. Or how Roman is in such a denial that he is incapable of even saying goodbye to his father, because somehow that will make his death come true to him. And Tom, who I barely mentioned during this video but who also deserves a shout out, when talking to Greg about Logan's death, with the tricky balance that Matthew Macfadyen does in his trembling voice. One that mixes genuine sadness with fear, because, like it or not, after all that he fought to stay in the game, his protector is indeed gone. And finally, in what I consider to be the most tender moment in the series, maybe even more than that shot in the third season's finale, is the embrace between the three siblings, one that, according to the cast, was improvised between them. A reminder that, once again, throughout all the backstabbing, the snarky remarks and power disputes, when things get tough, they do have each other's back. At least in that moment. And as we watch each sibling go their own way, we get Shiv leaving and Roman being the only one who actually goes to see their father's dead body, almost as a form of closure for him. Connor, who stayed behind and decided to not let Logan cloud his life anymore, has with Willa what might be one of the most honest conversations I've ever seen in succession, and proceeds with the wedding, proving me and many others who doubted their relationship, with the two finding an agreement that seems like the closest thing to love that we could find in the show. Finally, we close the episode with Kendall. There's a comment that I saw on social medias back then that I couldn't find the source of, but that stuck with me since, and I think is the perfect closure to this essay. Reflecting on the fact that Kendall stayed behind, watching Logan's body being taken from afar, he described how sad it was that even in death, Ken couldn't be close to him. Without ever being able to prove himself, he was now forced to forever live with his father's last words to him and his siblings.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Wow. This video is kind of a comeback for me, and a weird one if I'm being honest. Unlike the previous one where I talked about all the bells say, for this episode there's still so many details that I feel like I've missed and might pick up on subsequent viewings. And it's a shame Succession is already gone, but at the same time, I cannot not respect Jesse Armstrong and his team for deciding to go out on a high and deliver what might be a landmark on TV. So, tell me, is there anything else that you noticed in this episode that I did not mention here? What was your favorite moment of Connor's wedding? Do you agree that this is not only Succession's best episode, but one of the best episodes in TV history? For all this, let me know in the comments and, as always, see you next time.